These are going to sound pretty generic to you, but it's very, very important to our clients. Let me start with the first one, the elephant in the room. Do E2 visa holders pay taxes in the US?
Well, if you're getting an E2 visa, the first thing is how much time are you going to spend in the US? That determines whether you're going to pay tax on just what you earn in the US or on your worldwide income. So generally, if you're going to open a franchise in the US, if you're painting houses, you're going to pay tax on the profit from painting houses in the US.
Right.
What kind of company you have and how you structure that is going to determine a little bit what rates of taxes and how you pay the taxes. But that's in its own little box. That'll have its own company. And then if you spend more than 180 days a year in the country, or you pass a substantial presence test, then you have to pay tax on your worldwide income. Right. So it's based on how much time you spend in the US.
So you're saying even with the E2 visa, I could get taxed just like a US citizen if I pass substantial presence test. Can you talk about the substantial presence test a little bit?
Yes, it's a test with a mathematical function to it to determine whether or not you're a resident. So it takes 100% of your days in the current year. And if that's over 183, you would be a resident. It also adds in 1/3 of the days from last year and 1/6 of the days from the year before. So year over year, I tell clients year over year, 120 days per year or 183 days in one isolated year. Right. But you can Google search substantial presence test and like put your own numbers in.
Right.
It's kind of hard to just explain. It's easier to illustrate, but
sure. But you're essentially saying that if you're based here in the US, you're going to have to pay taxes not only from that particular business, but also from your worldwide income as well. Taking a step back, suppose that our clients work with you. Would there be a way you could help them to sort of structure their LLCs and companies in such a way that the worldwide income tax they pay isn't as hurtful?
Well, we have to meet. We call it pre-immigration tax planning. So we have to meet and review what assets and what companies you have, where they're paying taxes, how much taxes they're paying. Maybe if you're coming from a high tax country, maybe if you're coming from the UK and your companies and everything is already paying high tax rates, you can claim the foreign tax credit and there won't be additional taxes. It's really when you're coming from a low tax country or a country with a skewed tax system. When I say skewed, just different from the US, like Brazil taxes dividends different from the US does. That's when you have chances when you could have double taxation. The only way to really, not the only, but really the best way is to discuss before you move here and look at what you're doing, what the options are. Maybe we sell some assets. Maybe we move assets into another company. A big thing is like the appreciation of assets. So sometimes if you sell like an apartment building that you owned for many years, maybe there's no local capital gains tax. If you're a U.S. citizen, U.S. resident, not citizen, but if you're a U.S. resident, you have to report that and pay tax on that gain. Maybe you want to sell it before you come and then not pay tax in the U.S. on it.
Yeah, absolutely. One other question is that, obviously this is a misconception in our industry, but green card holders, are they subject to another taxation as opposed to E2 visa holders or any non-immigrant visa holders?
Well, when you get the green card, you're like a resident. So the green card pays, if you have a green card, you pay tax on your worldwide income. You're a U.S. tax resident, whether you're in the U.S. or not in the U.S. And the EB2, for example, will get you a green card. The EB5, these EB visas will get you a green card. And when you get the green card, you're like committed to the U.S. You're going to pay taxes here. We still should talk before you take possession of the green card and make sure that you take steps to lower your U.S. taxes because you will be subject to tax when you get it. On an E2 visa, it's great because you don't have to stay here if you don't want to.
Right. Let's talk about some of the common mistakes that you see. Obviously, you've been doing this for over many, many years. What are some of the common mistakes that foreign investors are making while coming to the U.S.?
Well, the first one is just not talking to someone and reviewing it. That's an obvious mistake, so I'm not going to dwell on it because we've been talking about it. Another one is not having your different business activities in their own entities, like or commingling activities. So if you have an online business, just doing stuff in the U.S. for that business instead of having a separate entity for that activity. Some people, when they have their E2 visas and they're coming in here and they have payroll and they have employees, they do their payroll wrong. That's really, the IRS is super aggressive for people who do their payroll wrong. So if you are paying employees without paying payroll taxes, the IRS will come after you personally. The IRS is very aggressive in collecting payroll taxes. So people do the payroll wrong. People forget to file their annual tax returns, or they file them incorrectly. I know you. I don't like have a numbered list, but those are some of the big things.
Right. So you talk about filing your taxes. When do you file taxes, and how does that process look like?
That's a great question. The U.S. is on a calendar year, so it's January 1st to December 31st, unless you have a corporation and elect otherwise. It's fairly uncommon. So from January 1st to December 31st is the year, and then either if it's a pass-through entity, you have to file by March 15th of the next year, and if it's a corporation or a person, it's April 15th. You can request an automatic 6-month extension. It doesn't extend your time to pay your tax. It extends your time to file your tax forms. So you still have to pay your taxes by April 15th, but you can file as late as October 15th.
Sure. Could you please elaborate a little bit on the process of doing that? How does that work? Do I fill out a form myself on the internet, or do I need a tax attorney, or can I do it myself?
For most of this audience, I imagine they're business owners. Right. The people who file the forms themselves are employees. So that guy who is doing the painting of the houses, you do your payroll correctly, he gets a W-2. He can file his taxes by himself. There's many different online services. Should be free. That's a whole different business, the online tax service business. But for international investors that have businesses, yeah, they should probably work with some kind of accountant or CPA. In the U.S., tax attorneys are really for like litigation or for like intense research or problems. Most commonly, CPAs, certified public accountants, are doing accounting and tax filing for clients. It's generally beneficial to hire some kind of accountant. It's not going to cost too much. We don't need to necessarily do something every month. You could just pay someone to do your taxes if you do your own accounting. But yeah, if you have a business entity, it's really tough to file your taxes yourself. If you have an LLC or you've made a corporate or an S corp election and you're making any money, you also are at huge risk of paying too much taxes. So that's a big problem. If you do it yourself, you do it wrong and pay too much taxes.
Right.
So generally, you would hire someone. Short answer.
Oh, all right.